Hey everyone, I'm Beth Boucher from Inspiring Young Learners, and today I wanted to share a quick video with you about how to make the most of your guided reading time so that you can support the ELLs in your classroom. Now, you want to be working on reading comprehension skills, decoding skills, phonics, all those things, and it's so important for your students. But how do you do that when those students don't have that same vocabulary foundation, when they're still lacking that key vocabulary to understanding when they're reading? Today, I'm going to share with you some really quick tips of how you can focus on vocabulary and reading at the same time. So let's get started. So for today's lesson, I'm going to be using these brand new close reading for new readers activities that are monthly readers that are perfect for newcomers, low language learners, first graders, second graders. You're going to see why they will really pack so much in your lessons when you use these. And so what we really want to think about is when we're working with kids who don't have the background knowledge, the background vocabulary that we are expecting of them, that most of the time our monolingual students come with that, and we don't have to teach that. Well, with our ELL students, we have to really focus on helping them build that background knowledge and building that vocabulary. So the first step is to pick passages, pick stories, pick books that relate to their surroundings, that are very relatable to their stories, that are relatable to what they're seeing at the store, what they're seeing at home. And so that's why I love these monthly passages, because they help to connect with their surroundings. You know, after you read a story about a scarecrow, they might go to the grocery store and see scarecrows up on the wall and say, oh, I know what that is. It's a scarecrow. And so we need to focus on ways that we can help them make connections from their vocabulary to what's going on in real life. That's how they will improve in their vocabulary at a much quicker pace. The next thing we want to do is front load any vocabulary. And so these activities, these passages, every passage focuses on 3 different steps. We want to help kids think before they read. We want them to think while they are reading. And we want them to think after they read. Okay, so they are going to go through that routine every single time, which will help set them up for success. It's going to help them not just approach a passage, start to read it and say, okay, I'm done. No, we want them to really take apart that passage, to go deeper in it. That's where that vocabulary, the comprehension, the reading skills are really going to soar. And so what I recommend to start with is, if you don't have a reading passage that's set up like this, but you're using a different guided reading book, preview it and pull out 3 to 4 strong vocabulary words, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 vocabulary words that you can help your students really work on as they're reading that text. The next thing is, if you can bring in some sort of realia, like this basket of apples. As we see down here, we're talking about apple picking, and we have basket as one of our words. This is a great way to make connections to vocabulary. So even if I was teaching this, I would leave this basket out on the table filled with all these apples and just let the kids start to talk and explore, because they're going to instantly ask, why are there baskets on the table? And you can talk about colors and shapes and sizes, smells. You can have them taste one if you want. But doing one thing, that you bring in one little piece of realia to start your lesson, is going to really engage them and hook them. Now, you can get started and you're going to have them look at that picture, or you might just want them to look at the realia that you brought in and talk about it. What do they see? They might just look at this picture and say, oh, I see an apple. Okay, then what can you draw out from that? Maybe they see a red apple. Any way you can expand on vocabulary from the start is really important. Maybe they see lots of trees. And then you can kind of guide them and see what else do they see. I wonder, you want them to ask a question. I wonder why there are so many apples on the trees. Depending on the level of your students, you might need to really show them an example at the beginning of how to ask an I wonder question. But as you go through these steps, every single time you do a reading passage, they're going to pick up these skills really quickly. Now here we're going to talk about 3 vocabulary words that we're going to work on. And the first one's rows. Now you can talk about how you can see rows of trees and how they're in a line. You could also use that Realia and put the apples in rows. And then see if your students can show you your apples in rows. Whenever they can touch something, smell it, feel it, anything like that as they work with vocabulary is huge. Now what they're going to do here is they're going to check off if they know this word, if they've heard this word, but they're not sure what it means, or if they don't know what that word means. And so before you even get into demonstrating, describing, showing them these words, let them think about it themselves. So maybe you'll read it to them and just say, okay, the first one is rose. Do you know what this word is? You've heard it, but you're not sure, or you don't know. So maybe they've heard it, but they're not sure what it means. So they're going to color in the exclamation point. Then you're going to say the word basket, not giving them any other information. And, oh, I know what that is. There's a basket on the table right now. And maybe you can even say, oh, how do you say basket in, the language that you speak, and see if they can make that connection to their L1. And then the word climb. Do you know what that word is? Well, looking at the picture, it looks like she's climbing the ladder. Maybe I think I know what it means, but I'm not sure. After they go through and rate their knowledge of those vocabulary words, then you can describe them, act them out. Like I said, use the apples, put them in rows. You could have them stand in rows. You could have them do some TPR and climb and show what it means to climb. You could talk about what other things do you put in a basket. You could go on and on with this activity in many different ways. So now we're almost into the reading part. And before you get to that part though, you want to have them make a connection. You want to have them use this picture up here, use their question, use this, what they see, use their vocabulary, and create a prediction. And that's really important. So now you can see we've spent all this time getting them ready for their passage. So now when they get to it, their brain is sharp, their brain is on, they have that vocabulary foundation. And this is why this is important for our ELLs, because a lot of times they come into reading without that background. And without that, they're reading passages that they're not connecting to at all, and they're not understanding, and they're not growing. And so spending this time beforehand to get that brain ready to read is going to be a key factor in their success of reading comprehension. So now we go on to think while you read. And before you even read this, so over here it says, you're going to read this story 3 times. Color in the check when you finish each step. Now, there's a QR code that it's going to read this story to them so that they can hear it first without, if they're really working on decoding skills still, or they're just not a fluent reader, that can take away so much of the comprehension. And so I want to give them that chance to understand the story first before they try to read it on their own. Now, something you could do is before you even let them see this passage, you might want to just give them a blank piece of paper. And you can scan this QR code here, and you can have it read aloud to your whole group or your whole class, and you just let them draw. So it talks about going on a field trip. So maybe they picked up the word, now don't make fun of my drawings here. Maybe they picked up the word bus. Okay, and then it talks about going to an apple orchard. So maybe, I remember when we were talking about this picture, we saw an apple tree that had a lot of apples on it. And then it talks about a teacher that has to climb a ladder. So maybe they remember that word, that vocabulary word that you've talked about already, and they put a ladder in. So this is before they see any of the words. You can just use this QR code and do a listen aloud and let them draw what they hear. Let them work on making that picture in their head. Then you can go back and you can read the story. You can have them listen to the story. You can have them read along with the story. You can have them read the story on their own. They can read with partners. There's so many ways that you can use this passage. The purpose is to repeat the reading many times. It's short. You can have them highlight the vocabulary words, go back and look at the vocabulary words on the other page as they read along. So there's a lot of activities you can do with this reading section. Then the last part we get to is think after you read. So we don't finish with just reading and moving on. We really want to take that a step deeper. And so it says, draw a row of trees that you would see apple picking. So now again, we're taking this vocabulary, we're taking these mental pictures that they've been seeing, and now we want them to apply it on their own. Draw where you want to go on a trip to. So we talk about going on a trip to apple picking, to go apple picking. Have them come up with their own place that they want to go on a trip to. And then maybe orally they say, oh, I want to go on a trip to, and share that. Maybe they can't write a sentence yet, but orally they can apply those words. And then what did they put in the basket? So they might draw a basket and then put some apples in there. Maybe you want them to count the apples or color the apples some different colors. And you can add in some of that vocabulary as well. And then there's 2 quick comprehension questions. The story is mostly about, and then one detail I read in the story was. Again, we want them to practice going back into the story. So even if they know, oh, we know, we put apples in our basket. How do you know? Ask them, have them go back and highlight it. Learning these skills, even if they're newcomers, are going to help them in so many ways, and it can be really fun. The last part is an extra practice. Go back to the story and highlight the word to. So sometimes it just has a sight word that you could highlight. Sometimes it says go back and highlight all the verbs. So we're going back to this passage, using it in a different way. You could decide whatever you want in there. Maybe you want to find all the plural nouns, or maybe you're working on adjectives that week and you want them to go back and see if they can find any adjectives. It is up to you of how you want to use that, but there's ideas there to get you started. So you can see that these activities really can take you a lot of time and go really in depth. We want to make sure that when you're working with your newcomers or your low language learners or just your struggling readers, you take the time to go slow and let them really work with a passage, let them really just resonate with what they're reading and apply it in many different ways so that they feel really proud, they feel confident, they feel that they've accomplished something when they come to the end of this reading. So those are some tips of how you can make the most of your guided reading time when you're working with struggling readers, low language learners, some things to focus on, and that can be a really powerful time when you're differentiating for your students. Please let me know if you have any questions. These passages are available in my Teachers Pay Teachers store at Inspiring Young Learners. They're monthly passages. This is the October close reading activities for new readers set. And please let me know if you have any other questions. I'm happy to help. Have a great day.